So last lesson we looked at electromagnetic waves, and we talked about how we can see this visible light which sits at the center of this spectrum of different electromagnetic waves, with infrared, microwaves and radio waves where wavelengths are longer, and if we make the wavelength shorter we get ultraviolet, X-rays and gamma rays. This lesson we need to look at some of the uses of these electromagnetic waves, these various parts, and how they can be useful or where they're used. So we will build this up, and I want all these diagrams or your own versions of them into your books. In your final exams you'd be expected to know some uses for each of these, so we'll start with radio waves. And radio waves are used for television communication and radio communication, so easy to remember the radio communication. You may not remember the television one, that's got to try to remember as well. Can you get an image of a TV and a radio in your book and those labels, please? The next EM wave type is microwaves, and those are used for cooking food in microwave ovens. Now, you can't just write microwave ovens or microwaves for your use of microwaves. You should say that they're used for cooking foods. And they're also used in satellite communications. So that's my picture of a satellite there, hopefully you can make out. So pause the film if you need to, but you need to get a book of a picture of a microwave and a satellite into your book, along with those labels below it as well. So gradually building up this picture. Onwards to infrared radiation. If I come out a little bit. So infrared radiation are used in electrical heaters. If you've seen those heaters, often might be called bar heaters, with red glowing elements inside them, they are using infrared radiation. And it's the infrared radiation that's coming off those hot metal bars. Cooking food as well, toasters rely on infrared radiation, as do grills. Again, similar to using your electrical heater, if you looked inside a toaster or into a grill when it was on, you would see the red elements glowing, giving off infrared radiation, which is used to cook your food. And then the other use for infrared radiation is these infrared cameras. Now, what I've tried to draw is an image on that might be shown on the screen of, say, like a police helicopter. And you may have seen it in these police camera action type programs where the criminal is trying to get away. He's in his car and then he thinks, right, I know, I'd jump out the car, and he hides in the woods and he thinks he's safe, and then the helicopter goes over the top and switches on the infrared camera, and you see this this glowing image of a person running through the woods, and they're able to guide the police dogs or the policemen on the ground towards it. And that glowing image is produced by the infrared radiation emitted by that person, and we all emit infrared radiation. It's how we emit heat, and the infrared camera in the helicopter is able to pick that up and produce an image on the screen, a bit like I've tried to show there, of perhaps two faces, but you get the idea, I hope. So your own versions of those three pictures with labels into your books, please. Coming back over here, visible light. Visible light, the main one to remember here is fiber optic communications. So you may have seen fiber optic cables in, say, novelty lamps. Sometimes you get those lamps or sort of room decorations with, looks like loads of strands of very fine plastic coming out the top of them, almost hair-like. Actually, these are more often used for fiber optic communications as well. And what you can do is you can shine a light into one end of the cable, and it will travel all the way down through the cable and out the other end. And you may have heard of broadband companies talking about now using fiber optic broadband, and that's exactly what they're doing. They're shining light down these cables, and the light is actually the signal of your internet communication. And there's lots of these fiber optic cables networks right across the world. Actually, there's cables stretching right across the Atlantic, providing internet connection between America and Europe as well, using fiber optic communications. Ultraviolet. The uses to mention are sun tanning. So sun tanning shops rely on ultraviolet radiation to tan people who go and choose to use those tanning machines. We're going to talk a bit about the dangers of some of these as well in a minute, and we'll talk about dangers of ultraviolet radiation. And the other thing that they're used for is security marking. So what I've tried to show here is a £20 note with another 20 written on it in sort of a purple which would only be seen under a UV lamp, an ultraviolet lamp. So if you work in a shop and somebody hands you a £20 note or a £50 note, you might be working in a shop where they've got a lamp underneath the desk, underneath the counter, and you could hold that £20 note below the lamp. And if you didn't see the hidden security marking appear, then you'd probably hand them the £20 note back and say, try again, please, some different money. And then finally, X-rays and gamma rays. They are separate, or to be considered separate when we look at the spectrum, but actually, in terms of their uses, it is the same. So X-rays and gamma rays used for medical imaging. What I've tried to draw there is an X-ray of a very broken bone there, snapped in half, definitely broken. So obviously used for X-ray medical imaging, but also can be used for more detailed imaging as well, X-rays and gamma rays, building up sort of three-dimensional images on screens by using X-rays and gamma rays coming in from different directions. And then finally over here, medical treatments as well. I've tried to show one of those machines you sometimes might see in hospital type programs, or you may have seen yourself. Large machines using X-rays and gamma rays, where the patient would be put into the machine, and very carefully targeted X-rays and gamma rays can be used to treat cancers and tumorous or cancerous tumors. So medical treatments. Again, the wording is important. So medical imaging and medical treatments, that's the wording that you should be using. So let's zoom out. Hopefully you'll be building up a picture like this with the uses on them. That is your first task for this lesson. So uses of electromagnetic waves. You need all of those pictures and all of those notes in your book. If you need to pause the film here, you've got a good overview there, then do so. But I want to see a picture of that in your book.